is a memory that always brings a smile to your face from childhood?
Who would you like to go first?
I'll let you go first, Ma.
Okay. Um, I believe that when I was in high school, actually, and there was a group called Close Up. And I came home and I told my dad, and my dad asked, "Do you want to go?" Because I had had chicken pox and I wasn't able to participate in the fundraisers. And so I didn't even know that I was qualified to go. So when I came home and I told my dad, after I had gone back to school after 2 weeks of not being there, my dad said, "Do you really want to go?" I said, "Yes." And so we had a good conversation. And he says, "What do you want to be when you grow up?" I said, "I want to be president of the United States." He says, "I believe you can do that." And so my dad, he says, "Come go with me." And he says, "How much is it?" I said, "Well, I think it was $1,300, $1,300 or $1,600. And went to the bank. My dad withdrew the money from the bank. And the next day, he went to the school and he paid the money for me to go. And so that was really, that still is with me till today. The belief and the support coming from my dad and my mom. And I'll always cherish and remember that memory.
I don't think I've ever heard that story. What about you, Dad?
Playing kickball, so Francis Drake Elementary School. That was it.
How old were you?
Between 7 and 12 years old.
Okay. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in to another episode of Take a Space Podcast. I am your host, Leah, and I have the pleasure today of being joined by my parents, Calvin Lewis Johnson Sr. and Dr. Leah Johnson. Thank you both for showing up and being a part of the episode today. Thank you, thank you, thank you. I appreciate it so much. Can you tell the audience a little bit about yourself, Ma?
Sure. Well, hello, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here. Pleasure to be with you, Deborah. And thanks for having us on today. Appreciate it. Just a little bit about myself. I am one of 11 children. I'm number 9. And my dad, I mentioned him before, he was a preacher. And my dad, our pastor, our protector, our guardian, and our go to. And my mom, she was an educator. Matter of fact, she's 90 years old. She'll be 91 this year in September.
Mm-hmm.
They instilled within us the need to have an education. And so even after marrying your dad, having 8 children, it was still within me to go back to school. So I went back to school and got a bachelor's degree and master's degree and doctorate degree, but not just for myself, but just to help other people. I was an advocate for education in West Contra Costa Unified School District while all of you were coming up in that
Mm-hmm.
school district. And your dad and I, we are both musicians and heavily involved in church. God is definitely the center of our lives and the center of our joy. And so now I'm a financial educator, helping families all across the United States in retirement, $1 million babies, just educating in financial literacy so people can actually realize that there are laws in place that will help the individual and families as well. So I just want to keep on doing that, serving the Lord, singing, and married to your dad for it'll be 37 years, and just loving life and having a lot of peace right now.
Okay. Dad?
Yeah, thank you for allowing me to formulate my thoughts. Um, Retired, worked for BART for 34 years, had plenty of jobs down through the years. Father of 10 children, 7 girls and 3 boys. I'm blessed to be married to your mom and enjoying life, retirement. One sibling, which is my sister, and My parents brought us up and raised us with some moral thoughts, things of that nature. They helped along the way.
Well, thank you both for being here. I'm glad that we get a chance to talk about this topic because we've had this conversation a lot of different times, and I think it's very interesting and it's necessary because I don't really hear a lot of our elders in the groups that I'm in being able to have the conversation of how their relationships have changed over the years from us being children to where we are today as adults. So, first, I want to ask you, and Dad, I'll let you answer first. What are some major differences that you have seen? You know, couple or a few. What are some major differences that you've seen or experienced parenting children from school age through high school to now parenting adults? Because we're all over 25 now. And so, with us all being adults now, most of us with kids, what are you finding are some major differences?
Some of the major differences I remember and realize now is that when you all was coming up, you always came to your mom and I for the answers. Whatever, was bothering you or whatever was troubling you or whatever you had questions about. Well, now, since you're young adults, you basically have come up to us with other questions, which is outside the house. And, we have adjusted our mindset to just focus in on what you're saying and wait if you're actually asking a question or you're just looking for answers. And a lot of time you have the answers within.
Ma?
Ask your question one more time.
What are some of the major differences? You know, you don't have to give a lot because I know there could be a lot, but what are a couple of the differences that you've seen from when we were kids, parenting us as children versus parenting us as adults?
Okay, yeah, just when you were younger, we took care of your needs, your food, your shelter, your clothing, all of the needs that you had at that time in order that we could take proper care of you, taking to the doctor, all that. And now it's changed. Parenting never stops. It just changes because we're on different levels of parenting as you are in different age groups and figuring some things out. So instead of us telling you what to do when you were younger, now you're figuring some things out. And we're careful about rather to advise you if you don't ask, because some of you don't ask, you just do. And then you tell us about it later. So it's changing, and it hasn't come to a halt. It's still in the process of changing as life happens. We're still changing in that process.
So, as we're talking about changes, we have seen a change happen from we talk about the early 1900s to the early 2000s to where we are today in 2020. The family, especially in Black community, has changed a lot. And a lot of people pointed to things like soul food, where you got to see Big Mama and you saw what the village looked like, where the families pretty much stuck close to each other. They were there to support each other. They were there around each other. Where do you see the village in today's world? And Ma, I'll let you answer first.
Mm-hmm. You said, when you just mentioned the village, you mentioned Big Mama. It's funny how we'll say Big Mama, but what about Papa? Papa was there too. And Papa was there. It might not have been a biological father, but it was someone, it might have been a role model that little boys looked up to because they wanted to be like Mr. Samuel, or Mr. Samuel was always dressed nicely or spoke a certain way. Mr. Samuel may have always had associations that were kind. And so you had those relationships. I see that we're concerned now as to who's in the village, because we have now so much exposure to just about everything imaginable that's going on in the world, that
Sure.
has sucked the life out of the village, to
Mm-hmm.
where the safety that children used to have, or the opportunities or the leeway for the parents or the grandparents to say something, not just to their children or grandchildren, but anybody else's children, and the parents of the younger children respected the advice and the words of wisdom coming from someone who wasn't even related to them, only because the respect was there and the wisdom was there.
Mm-hmm.
We grandparents who were older, 60s, 70s, 80s, and now we have grandparents who are younger, who may have had children very, very young, in their teens and later teens, and didn't have a chance to, quote unquote, as they say, experience life. So now parents are trying to live vicariously through their children, but the village, the notion of the village has changed. And so the question is, can we get it back? Or will it be accepted how it was? Like Dad said, the morals and the standards. And what
Mm-hmm.
does that look like? Because what was common to us, your dad's era and I generation, is not common to your children who are younger than yours. We poured into you what we knew. And we
Mm-hmm.
always say, if it was good for us, it'll be good for our children. We just wanted to
Right.
make sure you had a solid and firm foundation.
What about you, Dad?
When it comes to the village, one thing that we have to all realize and understand, that the baton was never passed. When I say that, Big Mama, Papa, whatever we label them as, they didn't necessarily. That was just something that was, I would say, God given. That was their
Mm-hmm.
gift to share knowledge, respect, share the respect, to show respect. Motivation. They would just come up and say, look like the right things at the right time. To, and it necessarily didn't have to be a relative, but as generations went on, you really didn't see anybody picking up the mantle, because it became too much of a responsibility. You say something now to a youngster, they're ready to cuss you out. I'll meet you around the corner, hit you upside the head with a brick.
Mm-hmm.
So the whole thing has changed. And then you have to realize and take into consideration, not all, a lot of that folks got caught up in the drug thing. Some recovered, some didn't. So that changed
Mm-hmm.
the whole dynamics of everything. And social media, yes, that's playing a major part in so many things. Not all good. Not all good. When we was coming up, no, it was about communication. You know, you communicated with your parents, you communicated with your uncle, you communicated with someone face to face, directly face to face. But as time goes on, and it's a different spin. We didn't have cell phones. We didn't have cell phones at all. Yeah, I'm going like, wow.
The closest we came to a cell phone were two paper cups tied together with a string.
With a string in the middle.
Was happy, very happy.
And we
So
pretended
you
that we can actually hear someone, but
right?
that,
Yes, they're only 10 feet away. It's fine. I hear you through the cup.
Yeah.
I hear you through the cup. So you bring up interesting points about the mantle not being passed on, or not being picked up, or the responsibility not being carried. This question is twofold. What is your responsibility now in this version of what we have as a village? And what are you hoping that the next generation will bring. So where do you see yourself in your role as a village? You can talk about yourself and the family, or you can talk about your generation, where you what you believe your role is now in this version of the village and what you want to see. Maybe you may not be seeing it right now, but what would you want to see the next generation? Because okay, grandmama is 91, grandma is 90, and then you two, and then us. So is we're not that far off from us coming to the point of where you are. So what is it that you hope to see from us bring forward after you have passed down the mantle? But first, I want to know what you feel your role right now is in this version of the village.
Okay, one correction. Your grandma was 92, should be 93 this year.
Oh, I was
Yeah,
off.
you was
Oh,
off. But that's okay.
okay.
That's okay. One of the main responsibilities is sharing our history.
Mm,
We have a rich hidden history
yes.
of knowing the accomplishments that was made down through the years. I wasn't privileged for that. I was just getting bits and pieces. But once you start looking and how can I say, start doing research and
Mm-hmm.
doors start cracking open, it's a lot of things I was not aware of that our people have accomplished down through the years. Creativity, building stuff, working with the hands, the math, geometry, and things of that nature. It just blows my mind.
Yes.
See so much that was going on in a positive way, uh, and still helping the other little ones, our grands, as they come up to let them know there is a God. Prayer still works.
Absolutely.
This is a faith journey. Nobody's going to give nothing to you. You have to work for it. Trust and believe. Prayer does work.
It does. Yeah. And I just would like to add, I'm just thinking of a word right now, time.
Mm,
Time is so important and it's critical because the village, like we used to know it, the elders took time with younger children and the parents
mm,
because it might not have come out so it wasn't harsh the way the correction came into play.
mm-hmm.
And sometimes it may, we had a lady named Sister K Wood from Third Baptist, and everybody knew Sister K Wood, and we better try to get it in gear. Sister K Wood was like, I mean, whew, yeah. Whenever you heard everybody straightened up, and even if you didn't know who she was, you heard her name, it kind of like trickled down. Okay, I better straighten up. Who is she? I don't know, but I think you better straighten up, right? But I just thought of time now as an acronym. I'm going to use the T for teaching. There was
Mm,
teaching that went on in the village. And then there was an interest that the adults had in the youth. The interest was, do you know the Lord? Because if you know the Lord, everything else is going to be okay.
mm,
And then we use M, there were mentors for the young people. And that had to take time to do that. And then the E, I can use a whole lot of words. There was energy, there was enthusiasm. And on my mom, she forever and a day, till she, just had to give it up. She was always with the youth. I asked her, I said, how do you stay so young, vibrant? And look, she says, I surround myself with young people. And so even using that word time, teaching, having interest, being a mentor, having energy and enthusiasm for the village. And then you can draw the people, the young people, even to you. And right now, though, it's necessary to mentor the parents,
mm.
generation under your dad and I, because they are surrounded by their children. And
Right.
it's sad. There was I talked to one of my clients, and she said that during this pandemic, she's a social worker, and there were four fatalities
Mm.
at the hands of the parents to their children, because the parents did not know how to navigate their way through their own home mentally with their children being at home during the COVID time. And
Yeah.
so that was sad. And so I still have to go back to time. And so even the contributions that adults our age, it's going to be, it's more time, but it has to be an acceptance by the parents, the young adults, people who are your age in their 40s and even in their 20s. And so there has to be that conversation, that communication. How do we, even as parents our age, let the young adults know that we're not in it to kill them, destroy them, or do away with the relationships with their children? All we want to do is help them, because we've been down that road before.
Mm-hmm.
We don't want to see them fall into ditches that we might have fallen in. Somebody helped us. So we're passing that on. We're passing that help on. But no one can be just, I know it all. Because
Right.
nobody's written a complete book on parenting that everybody's been able to follow. It's not written. So it's the acceptance and being open to receive that help, that assistance, call it whatever you want, but being available to receive that assistance. Throw it on the wall, see what sticks. Everything is not going to be for everybody,
Right.
but we can definitely encourage without downing and demoralizing people.
Right.
But how can we encourage? How can we praise? How can we recognize parents and children for what they're doing right? Continue to do that. I always say, if you want whatever you want more of, you praise that.
Yes, I remember that.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. So what do you feel, because I can see a lot of the elders in grandmama's position and grandma's position, in your position, that are in the church, who are trying to do more to help pass on the mantle, to pass the baton, so that we can keep this marathon going. What are some things or something that you hope to see the next generation take up, grow into, continue, start, or stop?
Stay focused. Whatever their dreams and desire, share
Mm-hmm.
knowledge, share experience.
Mm,
Be afraid to ask. Don't be afraid to ask.
absolutely.
So, excuse me. You can have you can things could be made so much easier. Not necessarily tell a person your whole plan, because people don't know. Just like those that are for you, there's always someone hidden in the past, in the back, that's necessary, hoping that you don't accomplish what you're trying to do.
Mm-hmm.
Be mindful. And one of the key things is, elder, you definitely have to look around and just have a keen eye to know what is right, what is wrong, what is actually in the mix of things for your journey. Stay
Right.
focused, stay focused. Don't let nobody take that focus away from you.
Okay. Ma.
There is always opportunity for self-fulfillment.
Mm-hmm.
But you learn that as you go. We were put here not to self-serve ourselves, but to serve others. But along the way, you have to be self-fulfilled so that you can serve others. I always use the analogy, if you're in a burning building and there's some gas masks maybe about 5 feet in front of you, and you have like 100 people behind you. Well, do you go and run and try and get all the 100 people and bring them to the gas mask, or do you grab one and then take the gas masks, to the people. Well,
Mm-hmm.
you got to make sure you're on point mentally, spiritually, physically, your health, all of that. You got to make sure you're on point because
Absolutely.
if you and adults are your dad and I, everyone included who's here to help serve, if we don't take care of ourselves, who's going to listen? Who is going to listen? I
Mm.
can't. I can't tell you. Um, you have your license, and I'm driving on the wrong side of the road at 95 miles an hour, but yet I'm telling you, nope. The speed limit says 65, and you got to be alert. Make sure you get enough sleep. And I'm
Mm-hmm.
driving crazy. Well, you're not going to listen to me. You're going to like, I don't know what she's talking about. And then you're going to move on, right? I may
Right,
have
right.
intentions, but they say the world is paved with roads of good intentions. But I believe for us, to all of us, that intergenerational relationship to have good merit, then the communication has to be open and there has to be the respect that that is given, that is received, that
Mm-hmm.
is shown, and that goes both ways. It's not just because people who are older will sit on a pedestal and say, you better respect me.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I don't know what you're about. I just met you, but I will because you're my elder. But I need to hear what you're saying to me because
Mm.
everything that comes out of a person's mouth is not necessarily always good advice.
Right, right, right.
But what I would like to see, I would love to see children respecting their parents. I would love to see parents making sure their children are brought up in the admonition of the Lord. That's what
Mm.
I would love to see. I would love to see parents telling their children, no, it's not okay to talk back to me, period.
Mm.
I would love to see parents telling their children, it is definitely not okay to cuss out your teacher. It's not
Mm.
okay. I would definitely love to see parents get more involved in their children's education. Children are being indoctrinated in the classroom. That's another subject. And like your dad just mentioned, history, our history, it's hidden.
Yes,
Parents got to get on their game and they have to read. They have to listen to audibles. They have to do whatever they need to do. If they want their children to grow up and to respect and be respected, you got to first know who you are.
exactly.
You got to know
Absolutely.
who you are. So, just I'll say for me, respect. And that
Okay.
has to be learned. It has to be learned and taught.
Well, I want to thank you both for being here. I absolutely appreciate always having conversations with you. Before you go, I just want to know if you can use one word to describe what your legacy, what you hope your legacy to be. What would you want it to be? Dad, I'll let you go first.
Ooh, very good question. Off the top of my head, that he was a loving father, that he was a loving husband, that he tried to help those that wanted to help voluntarily, that he would always be ready to outreach and go, even a total stranger. Somebody who came up and they needed some food, he would go and buy them some food. Um, wouldn't mind having conversations with strangers. We witnessed that. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah, all these things.
yeah.
Yes, my dad does
Um,
all these things, y'all.
but most of all, after saying all of that, that he really did love God and tried to give him his best at all times. Not perfect by no means, not perfect, but working on it.
So the one word is love as an action. Got it. Love is a verb. Yes. Yes. Ma.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Ma, what one word would be used to describe, or would you want to be used to describe your legacy?
Kind, kindness.
Kind.
Yeah.
Okay.
Hmm.
Okay. Well, thank you all for tuning in to another episode of Take a Space Podcast. I greatly appreciate you. Thank you, Ma. Thank you, Dad, for being on. Um, I know that you're not very big on social media, but if you have anything you like to plug, like financial literacy courses or consultations or anything like that.
Sure, absolutely. And I know the sun is going down, and so we're getting a little darker. We got a lot of shadows on our face, but just really quickly, I am a licensed agent and in insurance, but that gives so much latitude to assist individuals. There are 6 laws, actually, just really briefly, that help individuals to build their wealth. And this is what the 5% of the population has been doing. For instance, there's this one code that was created in 1913 that's
Mm-hmm.
allowed families to have family banks. It's concepts, infinite banking systems, to where the family doesn't have to go to a brick and mortar, but allows the families to build this generational wealth and enjoy it while they are living. This is why you have people who never run out of money, because they built tax-free cash accumulation because of certain tax laws. So if anyone wants to meet with me, Deborah has the information. And yes, we've been calling her Deborah. She's my namesake, but we call her Deborah. But definitely there's more to it, and would love to chat with you. Just give me a call.
Thank you. Dad, anything? Any other last words?
I just appreciate you taking the time out to interview us. Hope you're happy.
I'm ecstatic.
Oh,
I
bless
am
you.
ecstatic.
Oh,
Yes.
bless I want to commend you on the job. I've been following you since you started. Not only just because you're my daughter, I love the idea that you have shared so much information. Some of it I wasn't aware of, but to get a chance to have a listening ear and hear others talk, it's been very enlightening.
I'm glad. I'm glad that the show is doing its job and making sure that people are informed, even if it's not from sources that they would not normally, reach out to or whatever the case may be, but just exposing people to different things. That's what I like to do. But thank you all for tuning in to another episode of Take a Space Podcast. I am your host, Leah. We'll be live on Thursday at 8 p.m. Central on Facebook, Instagram, and no, on Facebook and YouTube. Please follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter at Take Up Space Pod. That's Take Up Space POD, to make sure that you are fully aware of all the things that we have going on throughout the week. We will see you on Thursday. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Love you, babe.